Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about something huge that's happening in Indian higher education. I'm talking about the UGC Equity Regulations of 2026. Now, these are some new rules that are supposed to completely change the game when it comes to fairness on campus. But they've also kicked off this massive debate all across the country. So, what are they really about? And why should you care? Well, let's break it all down.
You know, when you peel back all the layers, this whole thing really comes down to one big question. It's a question that, honestly, countries all over the world are trying to figure out. How do you make college fair for everyone? I mean, how do you make sure every single student gets a real, honest shot? That question, that's exactly why these new regulations were created in the first place.
So, what's India's answer to that big question of fairness? Well, it all kicks off with this brand new set of rules that dropped in 2026. They're designed to take this challenge on, head on.
Okay, so picture this. It's January 2026, and suddenly this notification goes out. It introduces a whole new rulebook for every college and university in India. And let me be clear, this wasn't just some small tweak or a minor update. No, this was a massive policy shift, a real game changer. So who's the one making these big moves? That would be the University Grants Commission, or as you'll hear it called, the UGC. Just so we're all on the same page, think of the UGC as the main referee for universities in India. They're the ones who set the standards, make sure the quality's there. They pretty much write the entire rulebook. So yeah, when the UGC makes a call, you better believe the colleges are listening. And this is the most important part, right? The why behind it all. The official goal, the one they put on paper, is super clear. It's to tackle discrimination head-on and push for more equity on campus. It's their big, direct shot at answering that question we kick things off with. Okay, so we've got the goal. We know what they're trying to do. But what do these rules actually say? What's inside? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the actual mechanics of how this whole thing is supposed to work. So, the first big thing is that these regulations basically force colleges to build a whole new support system. We're talking about things like establishing brand new equal opportunity centers and special equity committees. The idea is to have a permanent, built-in structure right there on campus that's all about handling complaints and, just as importantly, actively working to make things more fair. These are really the building blocks for the whole new system. And a key question is, who is this all for? Who are they trying to protect? Well, the net they're casting is really, really wide. The rules are aimed at stopping discrimination based on all sorts of things: caste, religion, gender, disability, even where you come from socioeconomically. It's meant to be this huge protective umbrella for a whole lot of students. So let's say you're a student. How does this actually play out for you? Well, the regulations lay out a pretty clear three-step process. If you feel like you've been discriminated against, your first stop is one of those new equal opportunity centers. That's step one. From there, your case can be overseen by an equity committee. And this is key. The whole investigation has to follow a specific set of rules. The goal here is to get rid of the guesswork and create a clear, transparent path for getting things resolved. But, as you can probably guess, a change this big doesn't happen quietly. Oh no. The second these regulations were announced, it was like a switch was flipped. It kicked off this enormous national conversation, and it quickly became clear that the country was, well, pretty divided on the whole thing. And really, the public debate boiled down to two very different points of view. In one corner, you have the supporters. They're saying, look, these rules are absolutely necessary. They argue that discrimination, especially based on caste, is still a major problem, and that you need a strong, structured system like this to fix it. But then, in the other corner, you have the critics, and they're raising some serious red flags. They're worried about vague language in the rules, a lack of clear procedures, and they're really concerned that this whole system could be misused. And this wasn't just a bunch of people arguing on the internet either. This debate spilled right out into the streets. You had student protests popping up on campuses, the media was covering it nonstop, and then it got really serious. The whole issue was taken to the next level. People filed legal petitions, taking the fight right into the courtroom. Which, of course, brings us to today. So with the courts involved and the public still split on the issue, what happens now? What's the path forward for these regulations? Let's look at where things stand right at this moment. Well, for its part, the government is not backing down. The Ministry of Education has been pretty firm. They've put out statements basically saying that these regulations aren't just some random new policy. They're arguing that this is all fundamentally tied to the Indian Constitution, to those core ideas of equality and justice for everybody. Now, to try and address all those concerns from the critics, the government also made some very specific promises. They said, okay, we hear you. And they assured everyone that special safeguards would be put in place to stop the rules from being misused. They also promised to make sure the whole implementation process would be fair and totally transparent.
But here's the thing. Despite all those promises and assurances, the final decision isn't really in the government's hands anymore, at least not for now. Because those legal challenges were filed, the entire issue has been handed over to the courts. It's now under judicial consideration, which means the judges will get the final say on what these rules mean and how they'll be put into practice. And so that leaves us with this big, lingering question, doesn't it? This whole story is a perfect example of what happens when a rule with good intentions, smacks right into the messy, complicated reality of the real world. It makes you wonder, when the rules and reality collide like this, how do you find the right balance? That's the massive question that India, right now,